Now it is my pleasure to introduce Sue Murphy, the Water Quality Specialist at Solano Irrigation District. Good morning, Sue.
Good morning, Corey. Thank you so much. I'm very
glad. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. I'm very happy to be here this morning. I always think it's lucky to be the first session at a conference, and I've always been impressed with BAYWORK, and I'm very happy to be able to share some information that might be helpful to people. So I'll go ahead and get started. So these are the types of things that I'd like to cover today. Kind of the beginning signs of what happened when we realized that the fire was coming and had arrived through evacuations. Our office was even evacuated. Kind of planning on the go, which we had to do a lot of. And some of the lessons learned when 5 of your public water systems are in a devastating fire at the same time. What worked, what didn't, and what we might do next time. And then developing a comprehensive ongoing monitoring plan, which turned out to be an overall reference document that's been completely useful all the time. And I also have some amazing pictures from the field. I think there'll be something for everyone. Here's a little background. If you're not familiar with our agency, we're located in Solano County. And we have over 100 white trucks with big blue S's that I like to think stand for Sue. And I tell my friends we rule in Solano County, and they ask me, where is Solano County? Our surface water comes from Lake Berryessa, a rain-fed reservoir that's actually in Napa County. And we operate the Monticello Dam. There's a power plant at the base of the dam. That's the largest morning glory spillway in the world. And then we bring the water down through a 33-mile long canal, and that's one of our treatment plants. We've had fires in the watershed before, and they haven't really impacted the water quality because it's a very deep reservoir and there's very little other activity occurring around the lake. So more background about our agency. We're primarily an agricultural district, but we also operate 9 public water systems. And we like to run with a very minimum of staff. And because we do so many different things, we have a lot of resources as far as repairs and outages and challenges, as long as they don't all happen at the same time. And so we knew that things were starting off bad on August 19th at 6:32 when Justin, using a new app we'd really never used before called WhatsApp, suggested that we use it. And so Stuart and Rachel and Melissa all said, yeah, they love that idea. And the very next thing was another person on our staff mentioned that one of our public water systems, Pleasant Hills Ranch Estates, had been evacuated, but they did have some power. The power was off at the powerhouse and the phones might be going down. And so the first problem we had was power. And this is looking out Justin's truck in the morning, and you can see the fire came right up to our generator there. And then that's one of our treatment plants out the window. And so we were actually pretty lucky ourselves. It didn't impact very much of our operational equipment. And then he says he's going to head down to Gibson Canyon. And it turned out pretty good using that app because we kept adding people on our staff, and we still have a continuous record of all of the times and the pictures for the last 3 months. So it's easier than having a cell phone. Here's a couple of pictures of the very bad LNU Lightning Complex Fire. I don't think I've seen as engaged fire of structures in any of the movies that I've watched. It was really devastating. And the first thing I wanted to know is, why is it called the LNU fire? I wanted a better name for our fire. And so I learned that the names are often chosen by the dispatchers and the first crews on the scene. And it's typically named for a nearby landmark or a road or lake. like the recent Carr and Camp and Woolsey fires, for example, were named for roads in the vicinity. And I don't know if you remember that unusual California summer lightning storm in August. I'm a California native, and one of the things I like about California is we don't have storms in the summer. And it was just before my birthday, and I usually take that time off and go over to the coast. And I didn't get a birthday this year because as soon as the fire hit, it was all hands on deck, and it was all we could do to just keep up with things. And multiple fires, when they break out in one place, the CAL FIRE calls that a complex, and it will often take the name of the biggest fire in the group. And so the LNU is what they call the Sonoma Lake Napa unit. So that's how it got the unusual LNU fire name. They started burning in Napa County and crossed into Solano County from the northwest just before 11 o'clock Tuesday, August 18th, in the area of Blue Ridge Drive and Mix Canyon, and forced evacuation of the people just before midnight, which isn't the ideal time to be evacuated from your home. The fire moved so quickly that even people that were watching it had to jump and hurry and go. And one of the striking things that you'll see in some of the upcoming pictures is how many vehicles were left behind. I always wondered, like, couldn't they get like two people drive two cars out? But you just don't have the time. You don't have the time to collect very many of your belongings. You don't have the time to even get all your animals. And there were more than 575 firefighters and support personnel early Wednesday morning. So CAL FIRE really responded. It was really over a wide geographical area, and it was exhibiting extreme fire behavior, which is probably the worst. It was very dry that time of the year. And here's an early picture of some heavy equipment that we had staged out for a project that we were working on. And once again, we lucked out that our areas and our heavy equipment were left untouched mostly. Power was the biggest problem, and we were very fortunate. We had just spent over $1 million on generators, which we have never done in the history of the organization. But we were heavily impacted last year by the public safety power shutoffs, and our systems had to go for quite a while without water, and we couldn't, rent generators fast enough. So in preparation for this year, we had public meetings, and we had actually invested that much in generators. And it's not like a toaster. You can't go plug it in. They have to be set up. They have to be appropriately sized. And so we'd already had the electrician out, and they were really ready to go for September and October, but we were able to utilize them immediately with the fire. This is a public outreach quarterly newsletter where we explain to people, some of the decision making of versus renting or buying, and the sizes and some of the challenges with a small group of customers paying to have permanent generators. And I'd be happy to share this with anyone after. And our engineers developed a super Excel spreadsheet that goes in very great detail over the costs and benefits ratio. So now what I'd like to do is switch to the joint monitoring plan. And just a sec here. Okay, here it is. So we realized right away that we were going to have to monitor a lot of different places. And we were on the phone with the Division of Drinking Water to get their approval for what they wanted to see. We got prior approval for 5 boil water notices, which we needed to implement. And we primarily were focused, like we had been in the past, with monitoring for bacteriological samples. But due to what's come out and is better known from the Santa Rosa fire and the Paradise fire, volatile organics are a real issue. So we were able to secure the proper sampling containers to also sample for VOCs at the same time. And we took samples from the 5 public water systems and all of their compliance locations initially. And after consulting with DDW, and Yvonne Heaney is, they have a California statewide expert because they just have so many fires statewide. And she explained that they had learned that if you would flush about 2 cups of water and discard it before taking the VOC sample, that would help to capture just the material that was in the service lateral. And there was another suggestion with chlorinated systems that the lab needs to include the dechlorinating agent of acetic acid to improve the recovery of early eluting volatile compounds. So I like to put one-look tables together, and instead of looking at 5 different monitoring plans, I just put everything together. And these are the 5 systems, how many connections they originally had, how many of their homes burnt down, what percentage of the system had been burnt up. And we decided to take that, we thought 10% of samples would be good. So we took 20% of samples. 3 were surface water systems and 2 were groundwater systems. And then I took a picture of the sample containers. Each sample for volatiles had 340 ml VOA vials with hydrochloric acid and 2 trip lengths that accompanied the samples for each sampling day. And then there was 100 ml amber with ascorbic acid. So first we would put the sample into the ascorbic acid to neutralize the chlorine, and then pour it off into the volatile sample containers. And additional details were shared from people that are experienced in the Paradise fire. I just picked up the phone and called Bill Taylor and asked him, you know, what did they learn from their monitoring? And they've actually taken over 4,500 volatile samples. I'm like, what kind of a lab can handle that many samples? And it turns out that the cross-control coordinator at Paradise Irrigation District is the same person that is cross-control for rural North Vacaville, which was one of the systems that we operate. And so he was able to bring his personal experience into how devastated their backflow devices were compared to what we were experiencing in our area. And really, I think some of these other big fires, the amount of homes and other types of materials are so dense that our fire was quite a bit different because these were primarily rural homes, very separated from each other, no gas stations or any types of other issues going on. And I think that's why we probably didn't see the degree of volatile contamination. And the idea was to sample, that was the first round of sampling at the compliance locations. The second round of sampling that we did, we specifically looked at burned out residences. And I'll show you a map that will help with that. So we ordered 20 sets of volatile sampling containers, 3 sets of trip blanks. The lab worked through the weekend, rushed all the samples, and we're getting ready now to do a post-storm sampling event to again look at more of the burned out areas and what effect there might be from rainfall. We had to establish special charge numbers to keep track of it because we charge and set our rates on the different public water systems differently. So that's kind of a little bookkeeping issue. And I thought it would be helpful for me to keep a resource list going of who I had talked to and what their contact information was in case I had to get back to them or share it with somebody else, like the health department. So every time I submitted the monitoring plan after a round of sampling, it was bigger, a little bit bigger. It had more contact, it had more results. And I think when people call me, a customer calls me and wants to know if their house was sampled or not, I'm able to tell them by just looking at this one document. So I kept adding appendices. I had the special project chain of custodies, and they have the special charge numbers on them. And each one has a different public water system ID so that the laboratory can report back when necessary, and our staff can be using the proper chain of custody. And it's worked out very well. We haven't had any sample results coming back for a different public water system, and it helps a lot if you can get that type of paperwork done beforehand. Here's a list of the houses that were burnt down in each of the systems. In Blue Ridge, we only had 2 homes, and we sampled both of them. Gibson Canyon, we sampled 2. Initially, we couldn't get that many sample containers on such short notice. So the homes that, the systems that had more homes, we sampled more of. We were limited the first round with how many sample containers we could get. But I think it's very useful. The highlighted ones are the ones that have been sampled. So next time we go out, it'll be very easy to choose other types of locations. And then Quail Canyon was pretty devastated. Rural North Vacaville, I think they lost about 50 homes, 47 homes. And then we have an unusual situation where we serve raw water to about 120 homes, and these 30 of them burnt to the ground. I put together a one-look results table too, so that if a customer called or the health department wanted to know what was the result, I had the sample date, the location, and the results. And so initially, we were looking for the bacterial challenges. There weren't any. So we no longer on the special sampling look for bacteria, because we were doing our normal total coliform rule sampling, and it was showing us we didn't have any bacterial issues. So the volatiles are just some of the low concentrations of disinfection byproducts, which are to be expected in a surface water system. Here's Gibson Canyon, same thing, nothing but, disinfection byproducts at very low levels, sampling dates. And so it's so much easier to look at something like this than to have to go and look at each lab report again and get a result. So I do a lot of, compound tables, chronological tables. And so here's Rural North, same type of thing. So then maps, the first thing everybody wanted was a map. Where are these homes? Are they all right next to each other? And everybody was so busy out in the field trying to, determine where we needed to be first, that we don't have a mapping department. So it was a little bit of a challenge. A couple of people that don't normally do our maps were able to pull some together. And the first map is Blue Ridge, and there were only 2 homes, and they're indicated which parcels with the green X's. And green means we sampled them. And so here's Gibson Canyon, and it's kind of difficult to see, but the red X's are the parcels that were burnt down, and the black means we sampled those parcels. And so it became easier to see that it wasn't just one side of the public water system, it was actually throughout the system. And when you drive out there, you can see one house standing, one gone, one house standing, one gone. It didn't seem like it just came through in a wave. Here's Quail Canyon. It's one of the more heavily burnt down systems that we had, a groundwater system. And you can see the X's are all burnt homes, burnt to the ground. And the green ones are where we have done some sampling already. And this is rural North Vacaville, much larger district, so the little X's are smaller, but it's still helpful for the health department and our staff to realize, where these are located. And then DDW has, since this happened in August, changed their guidance on what to do in response to wildfire. Instead of just issuing boil water notices, which they learned is probably, a challenge, you need to issue an unsafe water advisory until you can determine that there are no volatile organics. So I'm ready to switch back to the PowerPoint. I couldn't find an easy way to, oh, sorry, here's the PowerPoint. All right. And again, this is one of our treatment plants, one of our tanks. And we were driving through the area and the fires were still going on. The police were limiting people entering to just PG&E and fire and police and the water agency. And nobody was available to go out and take samples. And I actually spend most of my time in the office, so I don't know where all these locations are. So they gave me one of our distribution staff, and we spent about 8 hours and 100 miles driving around in rural parts of the county. He knew where the locations were, and I did all the paperwork. So immediately we learned from a previous fire that we wanted to set up a fill station. And in the past, we set them up in the actual remote areas. And we actually found that the people didn't go there. They weren't there. So we set this up at our main office, and people could come 24/7 and get some water. And I have a little collection of water fill station pictures now, looking for that very perfect water fill station. I was impressed when I saw this picture from the Napa earthquake. I like the sign. And then the picture on the side there is out in Quail Canyon in 2015. We were impacted by the rag fire, but none of the structures were burnt down. And so we set this fill station up on a fire hydrant and had a staff member out there all day, and not one person came and got water. So we didn't want to do that again. But I'm saving for you. Yeah.
If you just want to click in the upper corner from current slides so we can see it in a presentation mode. We're looking at all your screens right now. There you go.
Oh, I'm sorry. Oh my gosh.
No problem.
I just was trying to get through everything so quickly I didn't notice.
Oh, you're doing great.
Thank you, Corey. I keep looking at the clock. I'm like, well, I've got plenty of time. So these are the two fill stations. This is so far my #1 favorite fill station I'll ever see. And this is Paradise Irrigation District. They have a lot of experience up there with the fill stations. They built them nice little wooden shelves to put the heavy buckets on. They have a hand washing station. And then over on the right there, they have a nice long hose. So if they bring a container in their truck, they can fill it more easily. And I believe they were given a lot of buckets that they were handing out to customers. We didn't have any free buckets, so people had to bring their own containers. This is a public newsletter that Rural North Vacaville did to inform their public all along the way as they were going through things. That 47 of the homes were burnt down in their district, and they really wanted to reassure people about the water quality. There are a lot of articles that the public can read, and I have copies of all of them if anybody wants articles on how scary the contamination can be from fires. And this is my favorite picture of our staff. This is our SCADA expert, David Negron, and he made sure to carefully lock the access gate to a property where we had some telemetry while the post was on fire. So I thought that was very thoughtful of him. And this was a picture that I really liked that was in a very good document that I'll be referencing in a few minutes, that kind of demonstrates the problem with pipes and how hot the fire gets on the ground and the pipes, if they're not very deep, and the water meter covers. There's a lot of interest right now in changing building codes to make these types of settings more resilient, using concrete meter boxes instead of plastic, and some things like that that we'll probably see happening. Only one of the public water systems had backflow devices at every connection. And that was very helpful in limiting anything coming into the rest of the distribution system. This is a truck of one of our staff whose house burnt down, and our SID truck burnt down. And still he came back and helped. He got a different truck and came and helped with what we needed to get done. I just was amazed when I saw it, because it almost looks like he torched the truck because there's no other fire anywhere around it. But I know he didn't. It was nice. The people out there were really remarkable in thanking all the responders, and they had tables set up with bottled water and fruit and cookies and different things. They were so grateful to have the help. It's just going to take years to recover. A lot of people determined to stay there and rebuild. And our public water system, you know, can't survive with 3 customers. So we're in the process of developing an overall regional approach to bring in some of the people that don't have potable water right now, and also improve the customer base so that it might not be as expensive for other people. And I don't know about you, but I think 2020 has been a pretty rough year, and I'm kind of glad it's almost over. We have the fires, we have COVID, we have the election. I had to stay home and work from home for 3 months, and my cat was trying to help me out. And it's just been a rough year. So here's some more resources I wanted to pull together. It was Ron Howard's grandmother lived in Paradise. So he put together a pretty amazing film, if you haven't seen it, on the fire up there. And if you have the time, their website up there has a lot of video of them sampling, and they've just had to do a lot of public outreach. And as one irrigation district to another, I'm pretty amazed. I think it's worth taking a look at. The article in Offlow on smoke and water don't mix that came out in March is a very, very good article. I can send people copies of the article, or you can get them from Offlow directly. Bruce Mackler, Yvonne Heaney, the name I mentioned earlier, she's the fire expert for DDW. It's a very good article. My favorite article, and I like to read, so that's why I wanted to include some of the articles, is this widespread drinking water distribution contamination technical article that was done for AWWA. The Division of Drinking Water has a really good public safety power shutoff and wildfire information website. And that's a very good place to spend some time looking around. And then I didn't want to not mention Cal Warren. We didn't have to use them, but I know about them, and I think that when you do need more resources than you have, it's a great organization to be connected to. And I did want to thank some people. The Division of Drinking Water, we're regulated out of the San Francisco district. Marco Pachenko as district engineer, and Alla Lilichenko is our regulator for these public water systems. They were great all the time to answer questions. Yvonne Heaney provided some extra technical help. And our lab, we use BSK. They were part of the team. They made sure that we got the sample containers right away and stayed whenever we needed them to run samples. I want to thank BAYWORK for the opportunity to present this information, and Bill Taylor with Paradise Irrigation District for sharing a lot of how they figured things out. And for our staff, Billy Jones, never sampled before. Now he's an expert sampler on volatiles. I can train anybody to sample, that's for sure. And then in Solano County, the Office of Emergency Services, I always feel safer here. I live in Sacramento County, but I actually feel safer in Solano County because of their director, Don Ryan. He's ex-military, and it's very helpful to have a military base right next door in case you need anything. And they were very good at managing all the different components during the fire. And of course, all the firefighters, the PG&E, the police, and just the helpful people. I went out and I was getting some breakfast burritos for our treatment plant staff, and I was in the drive-through window, and I looked out and I saw about 100 PG&E trucks in a row going by me. And I thought they were maybe going around the block in a circle because I couldn't believe there was that many PG&E trucks, but they were out there working on all the poles. I can't remember the number of poles that they replaced, and there were wires all over the place. It was like living in a disaster movie. So that I got through. I should have put 10 more pages sooner than I thought. Are there any questions?
Yes, Sue, this is great. Thank you so much. This is your opportunity to pose some questions. And Robert Scott asked, what is the present state of operations? Have you returned to normal, or are there still areas to repair? Excellent question.
Oh, yeah, there's a lot of areas to repair. Our equipment and treatment plants weren't devastated. I think we'd be in a much worse situation if any of them had burnt out. But one of the things that we did, and we do as routine, we have a weed control department that is all over the county, making sure that our canals are clear and the area around our storage tanks is cleared. Sometimes they're mowing things, sometimes they're using chemicals. And we always keep a wide range of open land around our operational areas. And as a result of the fire, our Gibson Canyon treatment plant, which is going to be the main plant for this new Vaca Valley public water system that we're going to be ending up having to put together to kind of bind together several of these smaller systems. We just bought property around it so that we have more control, because that very easily could have burnt up, and it's very expensive to replace a surface water treatment plant. Thought I might go back over and see if there's anything in particular.
Sue, we had a question from Lydia Rossiter. Is there anything you would do differently to prepare for the next emergency event?
I think so. I really like emergency response. All my life I have, and I've been involved in, previous to coming here, I've been here 15 years to some pretty big events. I think communication was a challenge for us. We have people on vacation. We have people that weren't used to working together. Maps, leadership. The people were tired. When you have a small staff and they have to work nonstop for 5 days, just making sure they have the resources that they need. We had generators. We had all 10 generators out at different sites at one time. And our staff were going around. They figured out how frequently they would have to go out and refill the gas at the generators. And that was really a full-time job for 2 people. And we were able to contact the people that we buy the fuel from, and we trained them, and they took over that, so that freed up 2 of our staff that could do something, that other people couldn't be trained to do. So that was something that we learned about. We didn't really use an emergency operations plan. I've been involved in preparing them, and that way you can answer that you have one and it's updated. But we didn't, it just seemed like there wasn't enough time in the day to get everything done, to be all over the place at once. I think our public water system staff, we probably have maybe 8 or 10 people for all the public water systems. Some of them are big, some of them are small. Fortunately, the largest one, the city of Suisun City, wasn't involved in the fire. So I think it would have been even harder for us if we'd had large systems like the city of Fairfield, Vacaville. The freeway 80 was shut down for a couple hours because the fire went over there at one point.
And Sue, another question was, did you glean any new insights from the analysis of all the samples that you took?
That's a good question. I was kind of surprised by the sampling protocol. You know, why we didn't just take normal volatile samples. And normally we don't do a lot of QC. We have been lately in recent years for strip lengths for volatile compounds, but that extra step was surprising to me. That was something that they learned. But the disinfection byproducts, believe me, we were glad every time we saw the sample results that we weren't having huge volatile issues. We'd be in a much worse position. If you go up and look at Paradise Irrigation District's results, which they have available, they have very high concentrations of a wide range of volatile compounds.
And are any raw water quality challenges expected with the coming rains?
I hope not. We don't have any indications so far. We've continued to do our normal sampling, and in addition, more sampling. And I just think that the fire was spread out enough that we didn't have, well, there were a lot of vehicles that were burnt up, and there are a lot of plastics with the tires and the fuels and all the different things that people have in their houses, the furniture, and, you know, just, we'll have to wait and see how long it might take. We were able to stop the leaks and shut off the connections to the homes. And we just haven't seen anything yet. I think we're lucky that the surface water is such a big lake. Berryessa is such a big lake, and the intake structure is so deep that even when we've had, and I've seen pictures, I have great PowerPoints just on the fires around Lake Berryessa, and there's been a lot of sampling in the watershed, that we just don't see a one-to-one impact with the water quality data.
Right.
Robert Scott asked this question: have any new staffing positions been created or considered since the fire incident?
We have a lot of openings. Everybody should check our website all the time. I don't know if it's one of those years with retirements. We have a board meeting tonight, and we've got 2 30-year people that are leaving. We have a lot of people, I think, are reevaluating their work balance with COVID and working in that type of proximity to other people. We're not taking on additional positions because somehow we always manage to pull our resources. We can bring in the water tenders and the agricultural staff, and we've had the luxury of people that are quite familiar with the district. It's pretty impressive to me, after being here 15 years, to realize how spread out. Somebody called me yesterday and gave me an address that I'd never heard before and wanted to know about the water quality at that address. And I thought to myself, wow, I don't recognize that address, and I don't live around here. Most of our staff are locals that are very familiar with the area, and that's very helpful. I think with all the economic challenges to agencies these days, from, people not paying their bills maybe, or, water not being sold as much, that we're trying to be cautious. And I think by nature, the district is careful economically. We were just given a new task by DDW this week. 3 of our lucky systems were chosen to provide, with almost, no timeline, information, financial information about how many people have not paid their bill, how many people are delinquent. How is the district going to get through the year financially without the revenue that it once had? So I probably think a lot of agencies are being challenged. The COVID challenged them. People are working remotely. Some people aren't working. It's really been a hard year.
I know. And I just wanted to do a little plug for the BAYWORK website. We have a section where you can post any water or wastewater job openings that I just sent everybody the link for. And that's a free resource. So you're welcome to have your HR group or whoever does the job searching or the searching for people to use that service.
Thank you. I absolutely will. I've tried, BC Water Jobs, and I belong to the Sacramento Area Waterworks Association, and we have people that come from all kinds of directions. I think we're pretty centrally located in Vacaville. We're across from Genentech on the 505. So yeah, I'll be checking it this afternoon. I always have people that are asking me questions, and I just try to give them a lot of resources.
Sue, you mentioned just briefly the impact of COVID on your response, and Lydia Roster from the Santa Cruz area said that in their area, it really compounded the fire emergency. Any insights from your experience?
Oh, it has. It has. We have a lot of policies that we're doing now. One is that we don't share vehicles. So that's why we had 2 vehicles. Normally, we probably would only have 1 out. And we managed our treatment staff so that they were not working together. We have 3 treatment plants, 2 smaller ones and 1 big one. And we have 4, at that time, we had 4 treatment plant operators. We're looking for treatment plant operators now too. And so we had 2 people on 7 days, 12-hour days, and then off for a week, and the other 2 came on. And one person worked the 2 micro plants, and the other person worked by himself at the bigger plants. And we just, after that many months since March, have gone back to a more normal schedule. But it's really impacting. We've been fortunate. We have about 80 staff altogether, and we haven't had anybody out with COVID, but we are doing everything possible as far as cleaning surfaces and being diligent with masks. I'm really interested in the next session after mine to see what other agencies are doing.
HR during the COVID.
Yes. Yeah, I think that's pretty amazing.
Yep. Robert Scott asked, were there any issues with water at medical facilities or anything special done for those facilities?
That's a great question. And we're kind of fortunate because there are no facilities like that out in the areas that were impacted by this fire. They were mostly rural residential, entirely. They were homes. There were a lot of animals that were impacted. Large animals, a lot of people had horses and llamas and cows, and some were able to get out and some weren't. And that was pretty difficult for people to leave behind animals.
I bet.
Wow, I'm still surprised that I got through it so fast.
Well, we're just right about on time, actually.
Great. Well, thank you so much for this opportunity. If they want to have more information about the generators or I think you attached a copy of the sampling plan.
Yes.
They're welcome to call me anytime. I'm probably the #1 person that answers her phone at our agency. I frequently get calls that aren't related to water quality at all, but I'm very happy to be here today, and I hope you have a really good rest of the week.
Thank you so much, Sue. We have posted into our chat field the BAYWORK survey for this particular event, so we really encourage you to click on it and fill it out. It's just a few questions, and we really look at these and take them very seriously, and it's a really great thing for us to plan for the future using these as well. So, Mike will also be sending you the survey via email later.
Okay, great. That sounds wonderful.
Thank you so very much, Sue.
Thank you.
For kicking off our big event.
Well, you're going to have a great event. Welcome back. I love things being virtual. So many more people can benefit. Plus, you don't have to find parking.
Yes. Or drive. Yep, it's all great.